This is Janet McNaughton. I'm talking to Blanche Coady in her home in St. John's about her deceased mother, Olga Smith, who was a midwife in Gooseberry Cove, Trinity Bay. The date is March 3rd, 1988. I have the paper that Bernadette did with you about medicine. I've looked at that in Gooseberry Cove. There was some information in there about your mother, but there were some things that I needed to know that were missing. When was she born?
1898.
1898, all right now. And she wasn't very old when she died, was she?
44.
She's only 44. My goodness. So, and she started she did a correspondence course with the Chicago School of Nursing. That's right. Now, how did she find out about that?
I couldn't tell you.
Must have been in a magazine
And
or something.
maybe the Family Herald. We used to always get years ago, and these things were in it. I know grandmother did. And we got things from there.
Everybody got the Family Herald then, didn't they? Yeah. And so she took that correspondence course. Now, did she get any she didn't get any qualifications from that?
Oh, yes, but that was later on after, that was in, well, maybe she was 38 by then. Oh, yes, she got a diploma, and she had her bag and her uniform.
So how did she take it up to begin with, then?
There was a nurse came down. In those days, they used to send out British nurses, I believe.
Yes.
And there was a nurse Smith came down to Hodges Cove.
Oh, I've heard of her because now I've been talking to a woman. Her name is Mary Sweetapple now, but it was Mary Drover.
Yeah, well, I don't know about it. She's from Hodges Cove, I guess, this name.
She's from Hodges Cove, that's right. And she used to go around with this nurse Smith.
Did she?
She was married to the minister in Hodges Cove, wasn't she?
Well, I don't know. I've got lots of pictures of moms. Well, one is supposed to be Nurse Smith, and I got lots of ministers, but I can't put them together.
Sorry, I interrupted you now. Now, did she used to go around with Nurse Smith then?
Maybe so. I guess so. I was too young to know. I was only 2.
I see. When she started to go out. You know why she took it up?
I think there was a real big need for some help for the poor people, because there was the only way you get around boats and horses, and it was isolated, no roads connecting the hospitals. And she was encouraged, I think, and she was in a position that she could do it, because we had housekeepers, and Grandma was there. You had a housekeeper, so you had a girl who was in service. Yeah.
So her family must have been fairly well off then.
Yes.
I see. That's my impression, that a lot of women who went around as midwives were women who could afford the time, and they didn't need to be paid for the work that they did.
No, they were never paid. Very seldom.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and one more thing I wanted to ask was, what religion are you?
Of my mother? Church of England.
Church of England, okay. Now, so then eventually she went to the hospital at Combine-Chan?
And in at the Grace
Hospital. And in at the Grace. Why did she do that?
Do maternity courses.
Did anyone, how did she find out about those courses?
Well, she was familiar with the doctor, Dr. Coxon.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've heard of him. He was in the hospital at Combine-Chan?
That's right, yeah.
Right, okay. And he encouraged her to go and do that?
Oh, yeah, well, they were great friends, and they, if she wanted help, Dr. Coxon would come.
So she must have gotten her certificate then?
Oh, she had a certificate. It was in a picture in the house. I don't know what happened.
You don't know what happened to it? She didn't keep any records at all, did she?
She had records, and she had her bag, and she had big books, and we weren't allowed to touch it. But as I left home, I don't know what happened.
Were those doctor's books? The books
yes,
that she had?
Yeah.
Do you know where she got those?
They came in the mail.
I see.
And they were big. I remember one big, thick book, and as we were little girls, I was never allowed to look at, but I did peep at it. Frightened myself to death.
I can imagine. Some of those books aren't very nice to look at. Now, would women come to your house to engage her, or would they just send for her when they're
We had a phone. The only telephone was down there.
I see.
And the men, they didn't have phones, or ever not to come any hour in the night. No, I remember walking when I was 6 or 7, walking over to Southport with my mother, and there'd be a man coming all out of breath, come, you know. And he'd go back to my house and get the mom's bag, and she'd go and deliver the baby, and I'd stay in someone else's house.
Now, I've heard of a midwife in Southport. Her name was Fanny Avery.
That's right. Well, she came along after Mom, and I think that's who got her books in her bag. I think she left it to her.
I see. Oh, isn't that interesting? So she came after?
After Mom.
Because, now, what year would it have been then when your mother died?
1943.
43. So now there was a midwife who Fanny Avery used to go out with, and her name was Jessie Dean. Did you ever hear of her?
Oh, yes, I knew Jessie Dean. Yes, she was a close friend of Mom's.
Oh, really?
But when Mom was there, now Fanny Avery was bringing up her family, and she didn't get out, but she could have been the same age as Mom, you know.
That's something else I wanted to ask you about, because a lot of women would wait until their families were grown, but your mother started going around when she...
Yeah, 26 when I was born, about maybe a year after. My grandmother, more or less, I know Mom real well and everything, you know, but the things that I was taught, I remember Grandma, you know, sewing and knitting and things, but Mom was never home. And these days when the child was born, the mom would look after him for 9 days.
For 9 days, yeah. So if that was in another community, would she stay at the woman's house?
Yes, I remember her going up to St. John's without. There's nobody living there now. And she'd be gone for 9 or 10 days, maybe longer if she couldn't get back, it was too stormy.
Would that be because there was no midwife in that place?
That's right.
I see. Were there people who would rather have your mother because she was a trained midwife?
No, there's nobody else to do those things. Nobody else. She did everything, and not only with the women, with the men.
So what other kinds of things did she do?
I remember her, and people are telling me since, too, but I remember as I was growing up that she would stick somebody's collarbone. She would catheterize me, you know, we had a lot of problems.
She did anything that needed to be done?
Yeah, fixed up their cups, and if somebody was... I remember talking to someone the other day at Sheffield, they told me that she would never be alive on it for Mom. Now, there was a Dr. Cross in Crownville, and but it was hard to get there, and so Mom, when she knew something, she knew if they had appendix or something like that, you know, she sent them over in the boat over to Harrison King, which was near her.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've also heard now that there were two, because I've been talking to a woman from Deer Harbor, but she's quite old. She's in her 90s. Now, she was telling me that there were two women in Little Heartsease, and you could go and stay in their home and have your baby there. I forget their names now.
I don't know.
But that might have been before your mother's time, you know,
because
that woman
Mom was young, you know.
Yeah. The woman is quite a bit older. Let me see now. There were some other things I wanted to ask. So how many children did she have?
3.
Your mother?
I was the baby.
You were the youngest, so she started going out after you were born. I see. Yeah, because I have actually heard of some women doing this work while they were expecting themselves. But that's not very usual. Yeah. So, okay. And now, would she have someone work with her?
Yes, somebody, older person in the place, in the settlement, you know. Yeah.
So maybe a relative of the woman who was having the baby or something like that? Or would there always be a particular person?
Yes, maybe. Like Jessie D maybe went with Mom.
I see. So, one of the things I'm really interested in, it's kind of hard to find out, is why some women get into this and others don't.
I think my mother got in and she was glad to get away from the house. She had nothing to do.
I understand that.
And she always wanted to help people. And she was encouraged. Grandma never agreed with it, you see, because she was gone so long. She'd always say, Olga, you're going to make yourself run down, because there wasn't much food in these houses. And I remember taking her meals there, you know.
Oh, I know. I've heard of some of the women sleeping on the floor with their coats wrapped around them. Yeah, because they had to work under some pretty unpleasant circumstances sometimes. Yeah. And she did die very young. What happened?
My sister says it was cancer. Well, everything in those days was TB.
Yeah. A lot of people had tuberculosis.
But she was only sick a month.
I see. That's not usual with
No,
tuberculosis.
no, she was only 6 months. The last month she didn't deliver babies.
Uh-huh.
I remember that because I was 18.
Uh-huh. And then after, when she died, then who took
Aunt
over?
Fanny.
That was Fanny
That's
Avery.
where
taking
things
over
went,
then.
yeah. I think she used to talk to Aunt Fanny and
Uh-huh.
spent some time with her, but I think this will better.
My impression is now, because there's a paper in the archive on Fanny Avery, and that's how I know about her. She's not still alive now.
No,
is
she
But
hasn't been
could
dead
be.
very long, but 4 or 5 years. She died
Uh-huh.
of testosterone.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Now, my impression of her is that she did it because people came and called on her to come and do it, but
And
she
there's
didn't
nobody
really
else.
enjoy
No,
it very
no.
much.
I heard that as well. Yeah, but Mom enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, most women, I think, did.
Yeah, she loved it.
Yeah. And they liked helping people. They
yeah.
liked the work.
Yes, she
Yeah.
liked it.
Because it's a little bit more pleasant than a lot of the work. Now, were there other women in Gooseberry Cove who go around and visit people when they were ill?
Oh, everybody visited everybody.
Everybody would, yeah. So if somebody got ill, other people would make sure that they were taken care of.
Oh, yes,
Right.
and they'd bring meals to them.
Uh-huh.
And if it was a man, they'd go and chop wood and see that everybody was united. You know,
Yeah.
help each other out.
Did your mother ever lay out the dead as well? Did she do that?
I don't know.
You don't know. Because sometimes the midwife would be the person to do it, and then other times there
Maybe
were other.
so. But grandmother had a trunk. I wasn't allowed to know too much, but she had a trunk, and I remember she had this purple material, and she used to lend it out, and then this white material. And what it was, the boats went running, and they were getting out of provisions in the stores, and grandmother would lend it if somebody died, and then when they get in St. John's or the supplies would come in, these things were returned to grandma, and she had this big old trunk. And it was
So was that to line the coffin? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah. I've heard of that. And it was different colors for different ages.
And all I ever saw was this dark purple.
Uh-huh. That was for older people. I heard.
Everybody, maybe.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. Let's see now. So she may have trained Fanny Avery then.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Fanny had. I asked my sister one time what happened to Mom's medical books, and she said Aunt Fanny Avery had them.
Uh-huh. I wonder what became of them. I hear a lot about books like that, but then when you try to track them down, you can never find them.
Well, that was the only thing I ever heard,
Yeah.
and I know Mom used to spend a lot of time with Aunt Fanny.
Uh-huh. They were good friends. Now, you were young, and she didn't talk much about what she did, but did she tell any stories about... I know a lot of the women who were midwives told stories about difficult weather, when they had to travel in difficult weather. Did she tell any stories like that?
I know that it used to be real stormy going the boats and on the horses, but she never complained. And how cold it was at the house, and they never had anything to eat. And she'd ask phone us or get a message to us with a slip of paper, bring food or something.
Uh-huh. So when she was in houses where people didn't have too much, did she ever bring things so that they would have...
This old lady, she's dead now, she told me time and time again how they used to be hungry. And Mom would come, or Grandma would come, and they'd have their pinnies. That's an apron full of food, groceries.
And she didn't talk to you about the deliveries that she did?
Oh, no, but I remember one young girl there, she was unwed. And Mom had been there 18 hours. How I know, she gave me a uniform to wash, and I found this note in the pocket. And there was a message sent after that protection, and it said so-and-so in labour, hard labour, 18 hours. I didn't know what labour meant. I got the dictionary, all it was work, and I never...
How old were you then?
Or maybe 13. And I could let it, but I know I read that note, and labour was only hard work. So anyway, a few days after, I was allowed to visit the baby. The baby died.
Oh, my.
I had to take up meals, you see, and when I go in, the people, our family were downstairs, and they were right quiet. Everybody used to be right sad. I remember distinctly. And I had to go in a certain door and go upstairs where Mom was in one room, and the young lady was there, and the little baby was over there, and I heard the baby moan. But I was allowed to creep over and peep at the baby. That was my prize for bringing up the news. I still see the little baby.
So you'd always get to have a peek at the baby?
Oh, yes. Like we were going to Southport and Mom had to deliver, I'd go to the house next door, and I'd be the first one allowed to see that baby, 15 minutes old. That was my treat. I always wanted the baby.
My little girl is like that.
Yeah.
She's after me a lot. She's only 2.5.
I said to Mom, how come you can get babies for everybody, even unwed mothers, you can't get one for me? And she was telling me, you get babies under the rocks or under the stumps.
I know, that's what they used to say. They didn't talk very much about it in those days, did they? So now, when you had your children, were you in Gooseberry Cove?
No.
You were here?
Yeah.
I see. So that was different. By then you would have gone into the hospital.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. When did you come into St. John's?
When I was 17, I went to work over in Common Sense Hospital.
Oh, my.
Nursing assistant until the grade 11 results came out these days.
So you were interested in that kind of work
yes,
yourself?
yeah, and then I worked in the sand during the war years.
I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. Gee, we went through that pretty quick. There weren't a whole lot of other things that I wanted to ask you. I just needed some background information. You know, do you have photographs of it?
Yeah. Got one up just now.
Oh, which one is she?
There.
And that was her sister? Is
No, that was my father's cousin.
Oh.
Smith, Mary Smith. She was Olga Seward, but she was Olga Smith. Yeah.
Now that was taken in St. John's?
Yeah. Oh, yes, she came to St. John's.
For a visit, or did she work here?
No, she come in the hospital, and she made trips several times a year coming in. I don't know what for.
How old would she have been when that photograph was taken?
Maybe 29, 31.
And what was her maiden name?
Olga Seward.
Seward.
Yeah.
Okay. My, that's a beautiful photograph, isn't it? Oh. Yeah, I can turn this off. There we go.